Councilmember McCune,
Here.
Councilmember Garitano,
Here.
and Chair McCutcheon.
Here. And do I hear a motion for the approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Here a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? The motion passes. Do we have any public input with us? Kathy?
No, there's no one else in the meeting. And none was submitted prior.
Okay. So we are on to action items. Our first item is planning and parks matter. One item ready for consideration. Mr. Vunich, or is Sam with us, or Joey going to do it?
Madam Chair, I was expecting the city administrator to present this particular item. I know his daughter was having the graduation parade for Eureka High School today, so it may have gone a little longer. So with your permission, I'll dive on in and tell you what we've done, at least from the Department of Planning and Parks perspective.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, as you know, the City Council has asked each of the committees to review the respective departments or entities that they're charged with responsibility over. And in this case, the Planning and Parks Committee for the Department of Planning and Parks. Our city administrator, Sam Anselm, has provided a memorandum regarding this particular matter for your all's consideration tonight. The key points of the memorandum relate to the fact that the charter does require, in situations like this, that the city administrator advise city council of potential shortfalls in revenues due to natural disasters, pandemics, etc. And so Mr. Anselm cites that as the lead paragraph in his memorandum in this regard. Thereafter, Mr. Anselm does his best, I think, to try to assess the impact of the pandemic on revenue sources critical to the city of Wildwood's existence. And I think amongst those is the table on page 2, which is identified as table 2, that shows what the collection of sales tax revenues were for the period of March through June, but not only for 2020, but 2019 as a comparison. And as you can see, the collection in March was very close to what was accepted in 2019, as well as the other months from 2019 to the projected budget in 2020. As you can see, he's run through different scenarios in terms of a 25% loss of revenue. That is the amount of loss, not the overall amount collected, and a 50% loss. And so as you can see, during the 4-month period, the worst case scenario appears to be a 50% loss. And then Mr. Anselm goes on to talk about the contingency we have, the 25% of a normal operating year in terms of revenue, and then the reserve amounts we have both in operating, capital, and then the unreserved amount. I think the good news that's presented tonight is that our reserves would allow us with no revenue to proceed forward for at least a year, if not longer. Certainly we don't intend that to occur, nor do we believe it will. However, we do have reserves that can offset many of the shortfalls that we are expecting in the next reports. The April report of sales tax revenues will be available in June, and then obviously the June will be available in sometime in August. So we'll keep track of those things and certainly adjust as we go. The final part of the memorandum is a summary of the actions that have been taken. I think key for the members of this committee is that we began canceling events on March 16th. That was the first stay-at-home order from the county executive. And we've canceled events through the end of June. The anticipated savings from those cancellations is about $84,000. And certainly that's a significant amount. Also, due to the fact that the events require police protection or police presence, they have identified a savings of over $10,000 just on city events alone. So far, although we're not providing the services the department is charged to offer, we are saving substantial amount of funds in the event, again, that the shortfalls are greater than expected. Also, Mr. Anselm asked the department directors, with support of the employees, to identify savings that could be done through the operating. And in the case of this department, all out-of-state travel will be dropped. The vacant part-time position, the part-time position in administration will not be filled. And then obviously we'll be looking at all of the components on a case-by-case basis. We are continuing to do those essential services, maintaining our parks, our roads, our bridges, our trail corridors, but we certainly are not doing anything that we do not feel is essential. So non-essential items are dropped. Additionally, as you can see, we've gone into the capital expenditures, and in terms of planning and parks, property acquisitions, there will be none this year unless told otherwise by City Council. And we pulled the Cone Park repairs off as well. I want to note that the list is short on the side of capital improvements for the Department of Planning and Parks. But as you know, we only had a handful of projects this year. The primary one of almost $1 million in expenditure was the Green Pines Park at about $750,000, and that's underway right now. So it isn't that we didn't take a full share of the cut. We had already done that as part of the budget process in 2019 for fiscal year 2020. Mr. Anselm goes on and talks about the Road and Bridge Fund and some of the savings that are projected there. But at the conclusion, between capital and road and bridge, that's a savings of over $1.4 million that's anticipated. So all in all, we've responded, I think, well to the city's council direction. And I think a key component I'd like to conclude with is just to say that although we aren't having in-person events, the department's tried to keep you all abreast of virtual events that we've offered over the course of the last 2.5 months. So you know that we are trying to keep our community, and our residents engaged with city government. So Madam Chair, I know I didn't do it as well as Mr. Anselm would, who's gone through the numbers frontwards and backwards, but I can assure you the Department of Planning and Parks is doing everything it can to address the pandemic and the loss of revenue. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say, I think the virtual events have just been awesome. It's kept citizens engaged. It's given families things to do together. And I think it's a really significant service that we can provide right now. And it really doesn't cost much. So thank you guys for doing that. Katie?
I just wanted to talk about one thing, and this doesn't have to do with parks and planning. It has more to do with admin and public works, but I know there's a couple of individuals that are on the admin and public works committee, and you had your meeting earlier this month. I know we've been working for about 20 years now for sidewalk extension along Streicher, and I know that's a significant cost. Is there any way that we can use a TGA fund for that kind of construction or not? Or should I be, well, the chair for that committee is here. So I was going to ask whether or not those were discussed at the admin and public works.
If I could respond to that, Katie, we haven't met yet. Our city administrator is in the process of getting that meeting scheduled and just sent out a note to see if the committee can meet next Thursday. With regards to your question or consideration of using TGA funds, and I guess in this case would be the East TGA Trust Fund, I might defer that response to Mr. Vunich, who can share a little bit more about what can or cannot be done with TGA funds and whether or not that could be something that could be considered there.
Just a quick question and point of order. Should we save this for admin's meeting and just talk about parks?
That would be fine. I just wanted
It's
to.
out of order. Correct.
I
Well,
just wanted to put it on the table since I had Joe here. I will attend next Tuesday's meeting since I didn't see the date and time. So Joe, if you could include me in the date and time on that meeting, I'll participate then.
yeah, it should be next Thursday, the 28th, if I believe. But anyway, I will. Yeah, we can certainly bring that up during our discussion there, and I think that's fine. We can address the question of TGA funds there too.
Does anybody,
I'll address it there.
does anybody have a comment regarding the modifications to the budget?
Yeah, I do.
Ken?
Mr. Vunich, so just a question regarding some of the ongoing projects. So obviously we are just amassing right now what the finances might look like. Obviously everything is hypothetical. You mentioned a couple different projects. So let's say we find ourselves in a situation where we do have some financial woes. Have we played out what scenarios would be if we needed to pause or something like the Green Pines Park or other things like that, and what that would cost to do that and how much savings? Or is that money already been allocated and it actually won't change anything?
The money's been allocated already and is not part of the savings calculation that's been provided for you tonight. The issue we would have is we have a contract with Demeen Construction, and in that contract we have a end date or conclusion of construction. So there are provisions in our standard contract for certain situations where we can discuss a stoppage of work. But in this particular case, I think it'd be very difficult to do. And as I say, although we don't want to depend on our reserve funds, they are there for this kind of rainy day situation. And Mr. Anselm has talked about that. They shouldn't be used unless absolutely necessary. And certainly the pandemic may ultimately be that justifiable cause.
Okay.
But at this stage, we're making good progress on the park, and unless told differently by the committee, I think we should proceed forward to its conclusion.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Crystal?
Joe, you can probably answer this. So if we have other questions, the recommendations that Mr. Anselm had put together. So I saw the out-of-state travel. If we want to kind of know what the in-state travel is and just have more questions, do we just bring that up outside of this kind of meeting? Is that how that should go? I'm just questioning how he concluded to those three. It's just more of a question.
I know that at least in terms of the Department of Planning and Parks, he requested from Kathy and I that we provide those line items that we thought we could have cost savings associated with. These were some of the easier ones, I think, given the status of the pandemic. Traveling out of state was pretty easy. We won't be doing it, just not for cost savings alone, but just for health and safety reasons.
Okay.
But I would suggest that if you have specific questions or if you want additional information, just email Mr. Anselm and copy Ms. McCutcheon, the chair of the committee.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I think that this is well laid out, and I appreciate everything. And my last question is I guess I need just information to understand a little bit better, is at the very top, the current budget status, the contingency, the 25%. So it's only allocated to the general fund. Is that what I understand? And it's just, I'm just questioning, I don't understand it as much. So it's not allocated to capital or road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Each of those have their own reserves, but the 25% contingency was created by City Council specifically, as I recall, for the operating components.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I was just trying to understand because I wasn't clear on that. So thank you. I'm done. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Katie?
I'm done.
Yeah,
Anything?
I do, Deb. Deb, I
Okay,
do.
go ahead.
Joe, and this might be suited for the meeting next week with admin, but on the capital improvements list of items here, do you see any of these items that would be cut that would result in a kind of a safety situation?
That's a very good question. And when I looked at the list, I know that Council Person Dodwell has a concern about Streicher Road and the safety of pedestrians. But the one item that kind of jumps out at me is the Woods Road flood mitigation.
That was my other one.
As you know, last year, Woods Road flooded several times. And it not only impacts Woods Road, but it impacts State Route 109. In fact, at the beginning of this year, it was closed temporarily because of flooding. That intersection, meaning Route 109, was not accessible. And Pat Burns, who lives on Woods Road, has come to a number of the city council meetings and expressed her concerns, shown videos of the water basically surrounding her house. So of all those, Mr. Bartoni, that I looked at, that would be one that obviously I think is a priority.
Okay, and thank you. And, each one of us on this committee and in the council probably have something on this list that, is a little bit closer to home or closer to their ward for sure. And you want to protect that and at the same time balance that with being a team player and what's best for the city and what's best for all of our residents. We actually had a HOA meeting for Streicher Farms last night, which that's where I live, which a lot of you know. And this was one of the issues that came up. And they know that, I was kind of giving them an update, and they know that the city is going to be short revenue, and they wanted to know how this was going to impact it. And, at the time I said, I don't know, but I got a feeling it's going to be an answer you don't want to hear, but that's, the residents are continuing to say, and I know Katie gets this exact same feedback, is it's a safety issue. At the end of the day, people are walking on the street, and everybody on this, on my screen here has more people walking around their subdivision this last 60 days than they've had in the last 60 months.
Mhm.
And it's become, and these are just things that we need to be aware of. So I just want to, and I might try to make that meeting next week also, but I understand the concern about the revenue. I know it is real, and I don't want to discount that, but at the same time, I do want to make sure that we're protecting the safety of our residents.
And certainly, I think Gary, Kathy, and I know just from observation over the last 2.5 months, our trail system and the park areas have experienced substantial use. And we're finding out where the gaps in our network is because people are calling us and saying exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
I need a sidewalk here because I'm in the street. And it's a great way, it's been a great way to understand where we need to go. I wish we didn't have to find out this way, but we have.
Yeah, and just as a segue, a lot of the residents in our subdivision have used some of our trails and parks for the first time in a long time, or maybe the first time ever. And I've heard nothing but compliments about it also. So congratulations to you and your staff for just a great job with that. You do it every day, just sometimes some people are just realizing it for the first time.
I've had the
Well-
same comments as well, and want to applaud the department for designing extensive upkeep on the trails as they have been. So I'm glad our residents have been able to enjoy them.
It's very kind of you to say, but as I recall, none of us on staff ever took a vote to spend a dime of the money that went into the construction. So thank you all. You've done a very good job.
Joe, has there been any work done on Woods Road recently?
I don't know, Miss McCutcheon. I think it's kind of fallen onto the back burner, so to speak, just because of concerns about not making any expenditures until we get a better grasp on the magnitude of the problem.
Mr. Boonish,
Yes, sir.
just want to bring up, so I know we're talking about obviously curtailing the projects, but at some point when we are starting to look at bidding new projects and sidewalks are already brought up, if we could evaluate this whole, sidewalk that ends and then you continue to die over here on Streicher Road, and then finally you get another pickup here, maybe that would be great, since this is there's no place to stand on this nice turn here on Streicher.
There are several segments of Streicher Road that are just begging for pedestrian facilities. And that one, the one south of the bridge there at Point Clayton.
Yep.
And then the area down more towards Streicher Farms, the Streicher Forest site, et cetera. So, one of the things that may come out of all of this is that we've done some very necessary and large scale projects, but maybe in the coming years, we'll kind of start filling in the little things that have kind of not gotten the attention, maybe because we've been focused on Route 109, Manchester Road, Community Park.
Right.
And maybe this is a good reorientation time for us all.
It doesn't all go to Ward 8.
Ditto.
Deborah, if I can make one more comment.
Sure.
Whether this is for the admin meeting or for this group, or just maybe it's just a general comment. I have confidence in Councilmember Garetano, but the one thing I don't want to see is these list of projects, and even if they do get delayed, I don't want them to be forgotten. And where if something that's is on the capital improvement schedule for the first part of 21, and then these don't get done, everything might get pushed back. But I don't want, just because of this unfortunate pandemic, that these projects get forgotten and then we just pick up where we left off in September, October, January, when it is, and then we just try to find a spot for these in the future.
Any other comments regarding the budget?
If I could just add one response to Councilmember Bartoni's statement. I failed to mention in Mr. Anselm's memorandum, he did talk about the 5-year capital improvements plan, and that'll be the opportunity to ensure that nothing gets left behind, particularly those priority projects. So my apology.
Thank you. No apology necessary, but thank you.
So our next matter of business is park matters, which is 3 items are ready for consideration. The first one's the update on the construction of the Green Pine Park. Mr.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, if you haven't visited Green Pines Park, you'll see that there has been progress on construction of the new neighborhood park facility. Weather's playing a bit of a devil with us. As you know, it's been rainy and grading, and a lot of the utility work doesn't go as quickly as one would like when there's wet ground, mud, et cetera, et cetera. But rough grading has started, and there are utility connections and stormwater work underway as well. So take it as the foundation of the house. It's not a glamorous thing to see, but it is what's necessary to make the glamorous part of the project come to fruition. A lot of the equipment has been ordered and it is being manufactured and will be shipped shortly. So progress is being made. There's a couple of things I do want to mention. There's been a few change orders. Two of the primary change orders related to the stormwater management and the plumbing components. And those were positives. Those were reductions, again, because the contractor, Demeen Construction, was able to solicit a less expensive bid from another company than the original one. So we've actually, two of those change orders were positive in our favor. So it will help offset a unmapped utility line that Ameren, Missouri has through the right-of-way area. Initial estimates is that it may cost about $7,000 to $8,000 to relocate. And in Ameren, Missouri terms, that's pretty inexpensive. So that's a positive. So that's the other thing I wanted to mention. We've had one surprise so far. Thank you.
So that'll offset the lower bid for
Actually, the plumbing was almost $30,000.
Oh.
I mean, it was a significant change and a real positive for the project.
Comments? Our next item is the update on the virtual recreation program and events.
Madam Chair, I'm going to let Ms. Arnett and Mr. Newberry kind of take it from here. They are our ring leaders, our ring masters in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Yes, Travis and I are quickly becoming Zoom experts for meetings and games. So we're trying our best. When this all started, the first thing we did was scramble to cancel as many things as we could, as the director noted, but we immediately saw an opportunity and tried to get things back on the schedule to get people out, keep them exercising, and keep community involvement. So we've completed a couple of events, and the first was a 4-week bike walk run challenge. They could do whatever sport they wanted, and they just recorded miles and turned them in. We had 52 people that these people are, I don't know if they're loving being home or they're hating their family or they're stir crazy, but they accumulated more than 6,280 miles of biking and running and walking. So I thought that was pretty impressive. We started with 4 weeks of family activities to keep some community spirit up with Chalk Your Walk, positive window messages. We did a scavenger hunt. The fun one is we did some coloring pages, which are pretty simple, but we had people within the community submit the artwork for those coloring pages. That was kind of a fun twist and made those pretty unique. And then we completed our virtual Arbor Day run with 40 people competing in the virtual event. We had one significant member participate in that event and win his age group. So congratulations to Joe Vunich for winning his age group for the virtual Arbor Day run. You shouldn't have turned it over to me.
20 to 29 age group.
I forgot that part, sorry. We have a couple of ongoing events. Our senior yoga, we partner with Wildwood Yoga and Wellness, and the owner was adamant that they need regularity and some wellness activities. So they really worked hard to change their senior yoga over to Zoom. So, and we've gotten great feedback. They've loved seeing their friends and having some normalcy returned on their Friday. So that one is continuing. It looks like we'll continue at least through June with that for virtual, and then we'll kind of reevaluate in another few weeks. Travis and Bree and myself hosted a community bingo. That was a party. We had about 50 families, more than 70 something people on bingo. We held dance parties in between rounds and just had a lot of fun. So we're going to do that again this Friday. So if you'd like to register, pretty good time. And we even had people in costume and all sorts of stuff, ages from very young to not very young. So it was a nice mix of the community. We held reorganized a food drive last week. I don't know the results on that, but we had buckets and buckets and cans full of food. As Gary noted, it was a mystery food drive because we never saw anybody pull up, but every time you went downstairs, another bucket was full. So the community came together on that one, which was nice to see. In 2 weeks, we're launching some weekly activities for kids that are shown here. We're going to do some sunflower seed planting. Earth Ninja, we're going to encourage them to reuse something that would normally be trash and make it into a treasure. We're going to hand out supplies for a craft kind of thing. And then we're going to do a scavenger hunt where we paint rocks gold and we'll hide them and leave cute clues. And they'll be throughout the community. And then we're working on some other things. We're working on just some online puzzles, some virtual day on the trails that people can, again, still compete with different hiking, biking, running, walking, all those types of things. We're looking into virtual concerts, some cooking classes. Gary has a whole slew of hikes that he has laid out that we're looking at planning, and they may even have a little guest video by Gary Cruz himself. And the last one, I'm gonna let Travis give it a little explanation about because he's been working on it more than I have, but we're proposing, we're working on trivia nights. So go ahead, Trav.
I'll make it brief. We found a service, an online service that allows for us to put together a trivia game that folks can play on their devices. And we can moderate through Zoom, and they can people can join us via Zoom while they play their game. And still in the works, but I think it'll be fun. Kathy and I have played a game together, and I think it'll be a fun addition to the virtual event programming.
So we'll launch that in the next couple of weeks. So Travis and I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have. There's our food drive results.
Wow.
Thanks, Trav.
Wow.
Welcome.
Can I,
Sure.
Chair, may I speak?
Anna?
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment you because I attended the Zoom bingo the last time. I was only able to get in about 1 or 2 rounds, but there was a lot of participation. Councilmember Edens was also at that session, and I was amazed. You're absolutely right. There are people across all age groups, and it was just so nice because, you know, you could see families either gathered around the table in their living room, and everybody's playing bingo, and it was fun. Very good work. Very nice to be creative, given the circumstances that we have. So I'm more excited now to see what trivia is going to look like, and I'm already planning on attending Zoom bingo this coming Friday.
Awesome, thank you.
Katie?
I just wanted to double check with you, the food drive, where did the food go to? I've had a few people asking me that and I could not remember.
St. Louis Food Bank.
St. Louis Food Bank, okay. I had some folks asking about whether it went down to Circle of Concern, but since it's within our close area, but St. Louis Food Bank's fine too. So you guys have done a stellar job with all of these things to keep folks entertained, and I've used a couple of them in emails that I've sent out or newsletters I've sent out for work. I've attached a couple of your links to your activities or the city's activities within those e-newsletters so that folks can join in even if they don't live in Wildwood. So
Great,
thanks.
thank
Good
you.
job.
Crystal?
So Kathy, on the rock scavenger hunt, I think that's great because people in Ward 7 around Lake Chesterfield, volunteers have found rocks, painted them, put little nice words on them and set them around the lake. And it's been a huge hit over here, which it just puts, you know, smiles on kids' faces. So I think that's fantastic. So my question is when you do hide these rocks for all ages, do you guys have specific areas that you're going to drive people to, or are we going to split it up by ward so kids can just walk to those locations? Or is there anything that we can help out as council members for each ward for that
Well,
participation?
if you have we haven't discussed the specific the specifics on it yet on quantity or what, but if you have a location that you'd like to see them, let us know. And I didn't make this clear, they're not going to actually take the rocks with them. They're going to leave the rocks where they are and snap a picture or give us some type of verification as part of the hunt. And then we've been giving out some Wildwood Wear prizes and things. So any feedback you have on an area that you think would be great, please send it in. We'd love to,
Okay, yeah, I
add them
think that-
everywhere.
Yeah, this neighborhood loves that. So that would be a great hit. And if we can help somewhere else, let us know. So thank you so much for all you guys do.
You're welcome. And the kindness rocks, that's what they call it when they paint the positive messages. Pond Elementary planted a ton of those in community parks. So if you're ever out walking the trail there near the playground, you'll see a lot of those rocks there. It's fun.
A lot of the elementary schools in Ferguson, Florissant, we've done the same thing, and the early ed program has done the same thing. It's a lot of fun. Enjoy
It
it.
is.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I just have one. The weekly activities for kids, only week one has a cost associated with it. We're either obviously asking people to use things they already have at their homes, or there are things that we've had in storage that we'll finally be able to reuse. The week one is the sunflower seed plantings, and we are purchasing some bags, little packets of sunflowers. I think it's around $100. So we thought that was a good way, a good approach. And again, trying to save money as best we can.
Our next update is on the facility reservations, event registrations, and long-term maintenance costs for parks and trails. Mr. Cruz?
Well, Madam Chair, I would just say before we start, as Kathy promised, this was the month we turned from revenue positive to expenditures greater than revenues.
It was nice to be revenue positive for a while.
So I only like to give this report in January and February. I don't actually like to give it the rest of the year. It's the only time we're actually making any money. So, but it just, this, you know, the parks, the pavilions haven't been used, the restrooms haven't been used, but we're still cleaning, we're still mowing, we're now mowing grass, and we have a ton of trash removal that we're still working on. And then we've done mulch just to improve the look and get ready for spring. So we've had $23,000 in expenditures. Revenues were down grossly as we expected because we had to, there's no pavilion rentals happening. Most of the money that we had for programming, we were able to issue a credit, and not out of, issue a credit within our system. So the money they paid has been deposited and it will just stay there. Most people aren't asking for a cash refund, so that's kind of nice. When they register for a program later in the year, we'll just register them off the money that they've already paid. So it'll kind of be more of a wash. But our income was only $700 this month, which was some dog park registrations, which also isn't open. So those are down. A community park rental that's, I think, months away from now. And then a little bit on some events.
Any questions?
You know, a quick question for me, somewhat related, but you mentioned the park and the pavilions. And I asked Gary about this week. I had a resident ask when we're going to open up the road that leads down to the new section of the community park. Is there anything new with that?
That's a very good question, Councilmember Garitano. The reason we closed that section of New Road to Phase 3 is we were down there one day and the family was having a reunion in one of the pavilions and kind of circumvented what we had done at the larger pavilion in the same park. Gary offered today some solutions, one of which is just kind of trying to restrict access to the pavilions, but make the parking lot area available for parking. And so once we come to a conclusion and Sam Anselm authorizes it, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
So there are no executive session matters. And so our last matter is if anybody else has anything they'd like to bring up for consideration.
Deborah, I don't have anything I want to bring up for consideration, but I just want to commend Kathy and Gary and Joe and Travis and really everybody there. I mean, I know at our work, we are doing things different, and everybody is doing things different, but still doing their job. And thank you for everything that you guys are doing, just to continue to do your job and to serve our residents and through all this craziness without much of a hiccup at all. And I know you have to do things different. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I concur. You guys are doing an awesome job. So especially with the virtual activities. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Katie,
Chair, I
see
have
you
a
on-
question. Oh, sorry.
I was going to make the same comment that I appreciate the positive attitude, and so do the residents, that all of staff has had as you've had to scramble to make changes to things and make adjustments to things. It just speaks to the level of professionalism that all of you show each and every day in the work that you do. So I know it's difficult trying to work outside of your normal environment. It's also difficult trying to deal with citizens who are expecting the same things that they've always had and are frustrated at times. So kudos to each one of you for your continued good works.
Crystal?
I just had a question. On the last meeting when we met actually in person, it was the naming of the community park. Did we send out something viral, or did we take a hold of that yet?
Council Member McCune, the chair asked me the same question just before the start of the meeting, and we haven't initiated it yet. Their thought was that we would, but our focus kind of turned to taking all of our processes that typically required people to come to City Hall for filling out forms, filling out
Sure.
applications, and taking them online. So we've gotten through that. And then we moved into virtual activities. But as I explained to the chair, it hasn't been forgotten. And as soon as we can work it back in the schedule, we will.
Okay, I was just curious if we, because a lot of
You
people are at
didn't miss
home,
it.
so
You didn't miss it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate, and again, I want to echo everything, the compliments to your team. It's fantastic, and you guys are doing a phenomenal job, and I hear nothing but positive reviews in our neighborhood as well. So thanks again, and can't wait to see this bingo thing on Friday.
Garantano?
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize, I think we might have maybe one more meeting, but, Council Member Gragnani, will no longer be running again, and this is his last term. So I wanted to share the picture that I took with John when we went at the, remember this picture, John, at the Calks Creek? When I made it black and white though, it gives it a little more classic look there. Remember the car?
Yeah, it looks classic. It looks like 1954.
Well, anyway, that's it. But yeah, we'll have to do some more tributes to you, John, at the next meeting, next Planning and Parks. We'll have more fun.
Just remember who took that picture, Garetano.
There's Ken's background.
Any other comments?
I would just like to say thank you very much to Councilmember Garantano as well. I know he was on the other side of the table, and we learned a lot of things from him sitting on council. Now that he's been on council, I think he's seen some different perspectives, and I appreciate his openness, his dedication to the city of Wildwood and its residents, and his continued support for Wildwood being a thriving community. And we're going to miss you on council.
You mean Councilmember Gragnani?
What's happened here? You mean
Did I say
Gragnani, right?
Garantano? Did I say Garantano?
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry.
We have the
All
same
of us Italians
initials.
look alike.
Thank you.
We
Thank you.
have the same initials.
I really do apologize.
Just got
I
ready.
got a quick question for Dr. Remy, a little medical question.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you guys use an intravenous I can never say it, remdesivir?
Yeah, remdesivir is so there's a huge shortage, unfortunately, because they've taken it now off compassionate use and most clinical trials because they don't have the factories to create it. I gave it to a patient a couple days ago. It's got some effect, not a great effect, but it's got some effect.
This is not on the agenda. You doctors, you guys get going in these meetings, talking about remdesivir and all that stuff there.
Right.
That's point of order. I hear motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I hear second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstain? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank
Great
you.
meeting, Deborah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for the
Thank you all
laugh.
very much.